And now, it's time for
What happened?
What happened?
What happened?
What happened?
What happened, Simoni?
What Happened with Simoni Lawrence.
Yo. What's up, everybody? This is Simoni Lawrence, and I got to tell you what happened after the all blackout game. First of all, I want to thank every single fan that came to the game wearing that all black. The atmosphere was absolutely immaculate. Like, our fans did their job to the T. Shout out to everybody that got all the fans out there. I know Hamilton shows up for Hamilton all the time, but that atmosphere was playoff style atmosphere. Y'all was loud, y'all was rocking, y'all was into the game. I felt the energy. Great job to the Hamilton fans. And we got to get right into this game. And, this is Simoni Lawrence. I tell you exactly what happened. And, I just watched the whole entire game for the second time. And, the facts was we just were not good enough to win that game on that day. We'll start on the offensive side of the ball. On offense, I feel like Montreal did a better job attacking our offense and keeping us on our heels and never really letting us get momentum to take over this football game. And every single chance that we had a piece to take the momentum, we bit ourselves in the foot. For example, this whole season, we have been the least penalized team in the whole Canadian Football League. This game, we had well over 85 yards worth of penalties. And just when I thought we were going to take the momentum on the offense, when Greg Bell had the big run, got us right in the striking distance, we got hit with that 15-yard, 25-yard penalty. And after that, we got back into rhythm, but we only got a field goal after that. I feel if we would have got that run and just kept going, we would have scored a touchdown, a much-needed touchdown at the time to put us up 7-3, and the likes of the game would be way totally different. And then it was just like we couldn't find rhythm, whether it was, overthrows or whether it was just short throws or whether Bo was getting pressured on the first interception. Montreal defense was on the attack. Like I said, the way they were running games is the way you're supposed to run games. On this one play on the interception, they ran a game where they digged out the pocket so much that the time that the defensive end folded, he was already on the same level as Bo, letting Bo not be able to follow through and get this ball to the place that he needed to get this ball. So that's why that pass happened to be an interception. And, we just could not get in rhythm. That was the thing that just destroyed us on offense, right? And it was one of those baseball score games. So you got to look for all the situations that you can possibly make plays. And you got to ask, did you make the play? And the short answer was just no. Montreal was on the attack all game and never let us find our rhythm. Even, just taking the checkdowns, you look at players like Giovanni, he was 4 of 4, but that's because we had to take these checkdowns. And what Montreal did a great job is when we checked the ball down, there was a linebacker getting down there to make a play. Could make a play continuously. And, they were bending, but they were not breaking. Kenny had a good game. A lot of passes went his way, him being the number one target. There was a couple of throws that I felt like could have went the other way to, different receivers at times. But, that's just part of football. We all got the eye in the sky when the bullets aren't flying. But it was one of those games where we couldn't get rhythm. Montreal defense was on the attack the whole game and kept our offense on our heels. Even on the one trick play when we had everything going. I was like, oh, Giovanni's wide open. And boom, smacks the ball down. And then our guy catches it, which I don't understand why he did that, but then it put us into a 2nd and 15, which is hard football against a throats defense. It was one of those things where, we just could not find the rhythm, and the big cause of it was because of Montreal's defense, and it was the way they were playing. So Montreal's defense versus our offense, that went to Montreal hands down. And then you go over to Montreal's offense versus our defense. Oh man, it's like if you could have told me before the game that Montreal's offense was only going to score 19 points, I would have been like, "Oh, we won this game." There's no way. There's no way that they're holding Kenny Lawler, Bo Levi, Greg Bell, and all these guys to under 19 points this game. But then you see why and how the Montreal only scored 19 points, and the reason was because they controlled the football game the whole entire time. Like, this game was played inside of the box with your eyes and then splashes out. It was a check. Just from the beginning of the game, you already seen exactly what they wanted to do. They wanted to make sure these defensive ends could not disrupt the football game, and we were just not adjusting. I'm talking about there was times where the running back would come up and chip one of the defensive ends and then get into the route late. But the only reason he was chipping is just to get Alexander on the edge. And whenever Alexander was getting on the edge, he was either taking off and running, as you see on early in the game, backed up when he ran for the big first down, looked over to the crowd and started talking. It was simply because we were not doing a good job rushing this quarterback. Like, we would run certain games and the players were just opening up lanes that just let him free for all run down, no like crash in the pocket. The games where it looked like we were playing like a prototypical type of quarterback. But with a guy like this, you got to make sure these rushing lanes are even all day long. And I feel like it was just not done. They had their way with that. And look at the big play on the touchdown. It was a beautiful. It was a blitz coming from the right side. So it's going to flush them to hit the right side of the football field, defensive's left side of the football field to his throwing arm. And it was just, we had Kendricks playing pretty much defensive end, and the Montreal quarterback every single time he would catch the ball. And you know what punt returns usually do? They lose ground to get ground. That's what they did all day. Anytime they seen a defensive tackle playing defensive end, they would lose ground to get ground. And that's how they was able to extend the play and throw that bomb into the end zone over Goose to Snead, and that was for the big major. And earlier in the game, Goose had a big hit on Snead, and the rules in football, you got to kill him. If you don't kill him, you got to be aware of him because he's going to be trying to get his get back. And the same thing happened with the defensive line on there, let him outside of the pocket to his throwing sidearm, and he had his way, and it just continuously happened all game. There was one point in the game on the one running play where, he kept it, he faked it inside, and we didn't have enough. They had 8 people in the block and we only had 7 in the box. And it's just because we were not triggering this game, there was times that the defensive, what they would do is they would have an extra offensive lineman in the game just to put the defense in a 4-eye. And what happened is they would chip us and then nobody would react. Whenever you're playing a Montreal type of team, what you want to do is, you got this 300-pound guy here and you're responsible for coverage or dropping over this guy. You're like, man, if he goes out and catches a pass, whoop-de-doo. You get your butt down on the and as soon as they hut the ball, you see if he's blocking down or what blocking out, and that will tell you exactly what's going on. If you see him blocking down, you just trigger and go get the sack right away. But we was getting caught in no man's land all game, and they pretty much controlled the whole tempo of the football game inside of the box. And then when they wanted to make plays, the ones that hurt us the most towards the end of the game was they did a great job just spacing out the football field. So when I say spacing out the football field, they found ways to get their athletic receivers one-on-ones with our linebackers, and that's what continued to happen. Whether it was man-to-man when our will linebacker had to go, they faked the screen and then they threw it deep to their running back Deese, and they got a major first down right there. Or if it was when they swing the back out, leave the Mike in the open field, but then they bring back in Rambo. So now he's the new check down. So he's pretty much the running back. And now the Mike has to try to cover a wide receiver in open space. And, that's what bit us at the end of the game. It was one of those games where it was a baseball score type of game, but the game was being dominated consistently when against our defense, as far as like just the control of the football game, the ebbs and flows. We did a great job getting a turnover, but we didn't respond off the turnover. The thing that we're so good at, every time we normally get turnovers, we're scoring, and we just was not doing that. And, that's just what happens when, you're in a playoff style football game. Our defense was on their heels the whole time. It felt like we weren't really rushing to go put Montreal on their heels. They had us on their heels. So that battle versus offense versus defense goes to Montreal's defense. Then you go to special teams, and that was just a wash. We thought special teams, we knew going into this game, special teams was going to have to make a couple big plays, just in case it was a game like this, just so we can tip the momentum, because even though we lost on offense and defense versus their offense and defense, special teams could have been just enough to tip us over to get us exactly where we needed to be to win this game. And it's one of those games where it was like you were watching the game live. You're like, oh my gosh, what happened this game? How did we lose this game? And, you go and watch all the fine fixtures, and it's just like, oh man, it wasn't good enough this time, to win a playoff football game. We didn't play playoff style football. And, it was disappointing. The guys have a lot to build off of this season to get better. And I feel like there's plenty of room to get better. A lot of first-year guys, and, they got formation to death, didn't know when to trigger. And I think these are all things that can be fixed, and they will get better. Free agencies here, and everything's about to start happening. And yeah, man, it's one of those things where, you're sad, but you're excited for the process of getting better, because at the end of the day, like every year, there's only going to be one Grey Cup champion, and then the rest of us, we just keep trying to get it until we finally get our hands on it, My name is Simoni Lawrence, and I had to tell you what happened.
And now you know what happened with Simoni Lawrence.